Tiki, first to you. The message from the Governor is he wants governments to continue to cooperate beyond this crisis. Otherwise, the recovery could well disappoint.
Well, that's true. And he would say that, wouldn't he? Because we've had, through the National Cabinet, an amazing amount of cooperation, not just between state and federal governments, but also in an unprecedented way. And you've heard a bit about it on Four Corners last night. There's cooperation between the Reserve Bank and the government so that one knows what the other's doing, which is sort of really quite a unique situation. I thought this speech, though, was also quite notable for what the Governor did not say. There was an expectation that he was going to say something perhaps more specific about the reforms that the government should get more involved with. I mean, if you remember, he's got all these, he did make some forecasts, even though they were rounded up to whole percentage points, but he also talked about severe shocks and potentially a change in the mindset of business and the idea of ordinary people as well having higher debts. Maybe their mindsets would change as well. So when he talks about this reform and the need to think about reform, here's what he had to say. Here's a grab of what he had to say, and everybody was waiting to hear.
A strong focus on making Australia a great place for businesses to expand, invest, innovate and hire people is the best way of extending the recovery into a new period of strong and sustainable growth and rising living standards.
Now, of course, the big question is, how do you innovate and hire people? There was suggestions that he might be saying something about industrial relations reform. There was absolutely nothing. I'm sure he's going to be questioned on this as well. But obviously, you've got people like Andrew Liveris as part of the government's Manufacturing Advisory Council now, and Nev Power, obviously, in charge of the Corona Coordination Committee. But Andrew Liveris would like a great big petrochemical manufacturing business started up again. Now, who knows what that might mean about requirements for, say, gas prices and that sort of thing. And this is the big issue. How much intervention, how much support might or might not be involved? And is that what we mean by reform? Or the drier end would say, no, we want company taxes down, we want possibly more asset recycling, that sort of thing.
Yeah, indeed. But interesting for what he didn't say. One thing, I guess, Andrew, that he did outline and in a way stating the obvious, really, we're facing the greatest contraction since the Great Depression.
Yeah, I mean, you could say obvious there, Kieran, but I'm still taking a breath when I hear it out loud from the Reserve Bank Governor, because it's something for all of us to really get our heads around. He you know, that was the key line to me. He said the national income, the biggest contraction since the 1930s, biggest contraction in national output, 10% contraction in the economy, and all of that to occur in the June quarter, he's saying. So we've seen those hundreds of thousands of jobs go already. More to come, it seems. He also flagged restrictions being lifted middle of the year and perhaps all of them going by the end of the year, except for the travel ban. So that was quite interesting. And making the point there that he'd have a more optimistic outlook than this outlook, which also includes a 10% unemployment rate, and he says it would be higher without JobKeeper, 10% by June, if the restrictions were lifted earlier. And we spoke about this a little last hour. I've got some more information on that, at least as far as Australia's most populous state, New South Wales, is concerned. I'm told that there is Buckley's chance of restaurants and cafes opening in a month in New South Wales, Kieran. I'm told that it is, if there is a lifting of restrictions here in mid-May, it will be more workplaces open, more retail open, but even then that will depend on the data. And the first thing they want to do from an economic point of view, because you see more parents go to work, is the schools opening. But we know even today that announcement in New South Wales was just 1 day a week. But that's what they're focused on first. This speculation around the place the New South Wales Treasurer has been pushing it of restaurants and cafes opening with social distancing, apparently it's a long, long way off.
Tiki, if we needed a reminder of just how tough things are, I mean, as Andrew said, the historic words out of the RBA Governor's mouth, something that we've been saying almost, it becomes monotonous. But the fact is we are facing this contraction comparable to the Great Depression, if not worse.
Yes.
And if we needed a reminder of that, we saw one of our two domestic airlines has gone into voluntary administration right now.
Well, that is true, and we'll see what comes of that over the next sort of week or so. I mean, the government was very strong on this, Kieran, that they did not want to end up, I suspect they didn't want to end up being a shareholder if they lent money to Virgin and that went wrong, and they didn't want to end up being a shareholder on that register with other shareholders, including Chinese airlines, and also effectively picking winners on individual companies. So it doesn't actually surprise me. It doesn't mean to say, though, that Virgin is gone or that a second airline is gone. We'll wait and see what the administrator does with all of this. And I know the velocity points, they've been frozen, but apparently they're still good when they're unfrozen, and we get another airline, if it is different, back in the air. I would just say one point, though, on the unemployment levels, because, as Andrew says, look, it is very concerning what the governor has said, but he did say on this scenario, our GDP will be, down 6% this year, potentially back under the same scenario next year, up 6 to 7%. So we will bounce back. My big question remains, why is it, Kieran, that the money flowing on WageKeeper is still not there? Because there'd be a lot of companies, I think, who'd be saying, no, I don't want to borrow and do my own bridge until this WageKeeper money comes. I think people are being dropped right now, and I wonder why this is.
Yep, indeed. And Andrew, let's look at this other story that you broke in the last half hour. I want to get to that before we move on. I'm going to be talking to the Virgin CEO in a moment, but this Strategic Petroleum Reserve, what's happening on that front?
Yeah, the Energy Minister, Angus Taylor, he says he's going to take advantage of these low oil prices. He's given me a quote in connection with it. He says the government will take advantage of these low oil prices to enhance our fuel security. And he's talking about, I guess, obtaining a whole lot more oil, storing it for the short term in the US. He'd already signed an MOU with the US government on this because they have the storage facility, but perhaps the construction of a storage facility here in Australia as well. And so we could be self-sufficient when it came to our fuel security. Now is the time to swoop, it seems the government believes, while oil prices are so low, Kieran.
Yes, indeed.